Let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is not here this week, but I'm Chris Carter, and I'm here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. And this is a good week to call in because with one less person on the show,
we'll talk faster.
More time to talk and get to more calls. So call right now, 866-594-4150. We're going to start in Texas and talk to Sean. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Sean, what can we do for you?
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple of questions, two different vehicles. I have an '06 Ram 1500 that seems to have some acceleration issues from a stop. Doesn't happen all the time, which is why I'm calling, because I'm trying to figure out where I need to look. But it feels as if I was trying to start in second, and just doesn't have any power. I can watch the tachometer and the speedometer slowly creep up, even though I have the pedal to the floor. And I'm just kind of at a loss at where I need to look and what's going on with it.
I'm wondering if it's actually is taking off in second gear. So it's giving you that slow acceleration because it's in a higher gear and it's bogging down. It doesn't have enough torque to move it. And then when it does kick down to first gear, it allows you to go fast. Have you tried to put it in low? So when you're taking off and it just feels like it's dogged, slowing down, have you tried to flip it over to low real quick, see if it drops down a gear and takes off?
I have. If I put it in first, because I have first and second and then drive, if I put it in first, it doesn't seem to change it much. But if I put it in second, oddly enough, it feels fairly normal. Of course, I can't go too far before I have to put it up into drive, but I don't know. But it's still, even that has not been a consistent test, because I felt like if it did the same thing every time, I can kind of narrow it down, and I just haven't had enough consistency to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like something's going on in that transmission. Could even be a problem with the MLP switch, which is the range switch on the transmission, that when you move the selector and it puts it into gear, it tells it, any first, second, third, fourth.
What is
neutral. It? The MLP, manual lever position switch. So wherever that lever's at on the transmission, it tells the computer, hey, we're in this gear and this is how we should shift. This is where the driver wants it. It may be a problem with that. We would start by plugging the scanner in, reading it, seeing what those positions are versus, the dash, wherever we've got the lever, whatever position we've got that in versus what the computer thinks it's in. If we put it in drive and it says it's in third instead of overdrive, we know something's not right there. We need to replace that switch. We've replaced a few of those, and we've had similar issues, so that's very possible that's what's going on. But that's your first step is to plug a scanner into it.
That would be an intermittent problem because, probably 70% of the time I don't have an issue with it.
Yep. All it has to do is read in the wrong position once, and when it does that intermittently, it would give you a shifting issue.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I'll look at that first. The second vehicle I have is a 2015 Toyota minivan. And, of course, I'm going to use the term hot. And you have to remember, we're in Texas. So when I say hot, I mean, 105 plus, 110, somewhere in that area.
Okay.
And we're driving through town, and it's just not, it's cool, but it's not cool enough. You can just tell that it's not keeping up with things.
Well, it's hot.
But when you're driving full speed down the when you're driving full speed down the highway, it works great. Is there something? The fan seems to be running fine. Of course, I looked at that first. I had it in the shop. They checked the pressures while the AC was running. They didn't see any noticeable issues. Then again, I'm kind of at a loss at where to turn for that. I don't want to just start replacing parts and hoping for the best. But
well, if they checked it in a shop, if they checked it inside with air conditioning in the shop, it's going to give them a different reading for sure. Or if they checked it on a cooler day, that would also give them a different reading. But once you load that vehicle up with passengers, different things happen. So it is possible that you have an airflow issue. So even though the fans are running, you may have a buildup of dirt between the radiator and the AC condenser on the inside. We had one so bad yesterday on a 15 GMC Sierra that it's caused an issue with the system. So we're going to replace the radiator and the condenser because they're completely loaded. They're not going to be easy to clean. It's cheaper just to replace both of them. But in most cases, they should be cleaned, and most people don't do it. We have them come into the shop. The air conditioning system is already ruined.
Yeah, for sure.
And they haven't
most
washed
people
it.
don't do it.
I mean, like Chris, if I said, hey, have you cleaned your condenser lately? You'll go, what?
I would say, oh, yeah, you've talked about that over the past.
Yeah. It's
But
well,
no.
I think I may have done it on my house once when it was so bad. The
Right.
AC guy said, look, you need to clean this. And I
Yeah.
go, yeah, I'll do it next time.
Next summer.
That's the same thing as your house. You've got to wash off that condenser to keep it clean. Turn the power off first, people.
Okay.
Anyways,
Yeah.
not on the car. You don't have to worry about that. No electricity there on this type. But yeah, it's got to be clean. So if there's not a lot of airflow in there, you could pull the top cover loose and shine a flashlight in there. And if you see a bunch of dirt in there, you're going to have to take that cover off and just rinse it. We don't spray it hard with a garden hose. It'll bend the fins, but just rinse it out so it's clean. And then try that and see what it does. Because if you don't have real good airflow, it's not going to cool. But on the highway, you got a lot of airflow moving through there, so it'll cool it down. Plus, the compressors run a little faster. But check that out.
All right. Okay, I'll check that out. I know that I went online and looked at several forums in regards to that vehicle, and it seems to have been a common complaint. And a lot of people were just saying, live with it. And I'm thinking, well, I might be able to, but my wife has a different opinion on that.
Yeah, that vehicle should cool. Here on a day that's 94% humidity and we're at 100 degrees, we have those vans cool just fine.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of strain on an air conditioner with that humidity.
That's what I was going to say. Is there a time when the air conditioner at all could be fine, but just 105 and humid is too much for it?
There is a point. Yeah, the air conditioning systems, once they hit 100 degrees, if it's very humid, they really strain to keep up with a full load of people in the car.
110. I mean, Sean, that's not that odd this summer. To have that, it might just not.
Yeah, it's a little drier there typically than we get. With all the corn we have here, we really get some humid days. But down there, it wouldn't surprise me to have, when I live there, 80% humidity at 100. Boy, that's hot. Yeah, those days.
We live in West Texas, so we have no humidity at all.
Well, then it should be cooling like an ice cream truck.
It should be normal.
Yeah, it should be.
Well, it's not.
My brother lives in West Texas out there, and you should have no problem with an AC system then.
Okay.
Does that help you out there, Sean?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Jim is up next. We'd love to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number here to reach us at the Under the Hood Show. Now, let's talk to Jim. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Jim, what can we do for you?
Well, I've got a 2016 Town & Country Chrysler. And when I put my key fob in the receptacle for the key fob and turn it to the right, the dash lights up, but it won't start right away. So I turn it back to the off position and try to start it again. Sometimes it starts. Maybe I have to turn it back to off a second time and turn it on, and then it starts. A local repair shop put in a new receptacle or switch where that key fob goes into. That was a $350 switch, and it still have the problem.
Uh-oh.
Is that the one with the weird plastic key?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not really a key. It's a key fob and then just a little, so that they kind of did the right thing as far as their thinking. I can see why they'd want to replace that switch for you, Jim, because there's a huge problem with those.
So much so that they don't even use them anymore, right?
Right,
I mean,
right. They stopped using
phased
it.
it out.
They went to the push button, but there was just a huge issue with them. There's a bullets in the bottom. Everyone I've seen do this, the switch was bad, and it's possible the switch they got for you is bad, and they need to just swap it back out again under warranty, because we've had that happen. It's just it's a problem with that ignition switch module in the dash. It's a little box in there.
Okay.
But I would think,
Go ahead, sir.
as many as I've seen go bad, it would not surprise me if it's bad. So if it was me in my shop, I'd say, let's just get another one, swap it out, see what it does.
And the company you got it from would
they'd
swap
swap it out.
How long ago did you have it done, Jim?
Oh, within the last month.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you should be good then. What else you got going on?
Okay, I want to make a second comment before we go away here. Stop. I bought this on a farm estate sale, and I got one key fob with it. I had a duplicate made, and the duplicate does the same thing. So maybe it is that switch.
Right. Yeah, if they're both keys do the same, both key fobs do the same thing, it would have to not be the key fobs. It'd be something in the switch. But I think it's probably in the switch, just from how many we've seen. We just haven't seen a lot of other issues. They'll need to check codes in the system and see what the code is. If the code is showing that the vehicle computer is not receiving the correct transponder code, then it's very possible that's what's going on is in the switch. That would be one of the codes they'd be looking for.
And it's also very possible. Jim, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. That if it's his mechanic, if they're not used to this problem, Jim might have to explain it a little bit, because it wouldn't be something you would think, well, I just got you the new part. That can't be it. Let's try something else. But in this case, if you see a bunch of them, you know that it.
Yeah, we see a lot. We do a lot of them, but a lot of shops don't, and they don't see a lot of them, or they don't want to work on those, so they don't do a lot. But for some customers, they'll say, you know what, we normally don't do this, but I'm going to go out of my way for you because you're here all the time, and I'm going to see if I can make this work and find out what's going on. And then it seems like, no good deed goes unpunished.
Well, and we've talked before about where in a smaller town, where if there's a dealership in that town that's still there, that local garage might never see that brand of car because they also have the dealership, so they end up working on other stuff.
That's true.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Adam. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Adam, what can we do for you?
Hi, I have a question on my Chevette. Every so often, I have to put brake fluid in it. It goes clear empty. Is there's something, the seal or something, or because it goes dry every once in a while if you don't drive it?
Well,
is that a clue?
It's 40 years old, and it's very cool to still see a Chevette on the road, no matter where you're at. It's that is vintage for sure.
So it takes 40 years to say cool on a Chevette like that?
Well, when you tell people I've got a vet, they're like, hey, that's cool, you got a vet. And then they see, your date goes, oh, it's a Chevette. Well, now it's becoming cool again, because now it's kind of a vintage piece of art seeing one run around the road, and they used to call it something else years ago, but I'd love to have one of those now. It's like a Vega, if they still run, they're cool. But so
and stop.
I'm working on a Beetle 71 Super Beetle in the shop right now, so it's got the big engine, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working on it, and they said, well, we just had all the brakes redone, but they're sticking, so I'm sure they're fine. Well, yeah, they had the brakes redone 15 years ago before they parked it 2 days later or something like that and let it sit. So the wheel cylinders are all cracked, and they're leaking fluid, but you can't see them because they're inside the wheels. So the brake pedal goes to the floor, and the fluid disappears. You can add brake fluid to it, and it would be fine for a week or so, and then it's going to leak down and kind of dissipate, and everything else is covered with oil under the car, so you probably wouldn't notice it. So I'm guessing, Adam, that your Chevette probably has some leaking wheel cylinders on it. Either you've got a wheel cylinder leaking underneath, or you have a brake line leaking. I would inspect the whole system, starting at the master cylinder and working your way back to each wheel. Start at the master cylinder, go down to the proportioning valve, and then out the lines until you reach each wheel, and look for something damp, because you should have some dampness there after driving it for this long and adding, if you've added a bottle probably to it after filling it
If
3 or
it's
4
going away, it
times,
should be.
it's
there.
going somewhere. And if you don't,
my dad says everything's pretty much shot on it. It's
yeah. And here's the
way
good
it is,
news
but
for
yeah.
you: it's cheap, and it's something that most people can do themselves at home. Doesn't cost a lot of money. So, for instance, it's going to be similar to the Volkswagen Beetle. The wheel cylinders, I put 4 wheel cylinders on it. They were $12.95 a piece. That's pretty cheap. The brake shoes in the back of that Chevette are probably $25. The calipers or the pads in the front are probably similar in price. The rotors and the drums are cheap. Just put it all together. I bet if you took $300 down to your auto parts store, you should probably be able to buy everything for it. That would be a master cylinder, all the brake hoses, the calipers, the wheel cylinders, everything, and make a brand new system. You can look on YouTube and see how to do it, and it's going to be really reasonable. Because if you take it to a shop, it's probably going to be $1,000.
Yeah. My other question is, I was putting a piece of cardboard in my car on my driver's side because my outside door handle's busted and my mirror fell off. Can I use like super glue or Gorilla Glue on the glass to hold the mirror on, or what?
Oh yeah, where the glass goes onto the mirror itself.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You can use go to a Menards or like a local hardware store. Pick up some glue that says for glass that'll bond to glass and to metal. Put it on the back, glue it on. We used to do this all the time when mirrors would come loose. Now we can get a whole replacement mirror assembly. For you, the only way you're going to find a replacement mirror for that is probably go to Car Dash Part, and they're going to have them, and they're probably going to be $45. So you could get a whole mirror, but if you still got that glass lens, yeah, by all means, just put on with glue from the factory, glue it, put a piece of painter's tape on it to hold it so it stays there until it's dry, and you'll be fine. As far as the door handle goes, you should be able to pick up a door handle on eBay or from Car Dash Part pretty cheap as well, and then you can keep that thing going.
Does that help you out there, Adam?
Yeah. So somebody always told me, I haven't seen a Chevette never. And a guy I know, he would always wanted me to trade me his Corvette for my Chevette. And I go, hell no. I go, Corvettes are a dime a dozen, then Chevettes.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thanks very much for the call. Good luck. That is something I miss a lot, even though I wasn't able to do a lot to my Bug.
You could work on it.
I could work on it. And for sure, the next summer I had it, I did more. And the summer after that, it was always just a little like, oh, okay, well, I've done that. I could do that next step. And YouTube and that Volkswagen Bug is not totally unique, but it is a bit different in that there are complete websites and companies, multiple. They're like Jeeps. There are a million places you can get replacement parts, and they're affordable.
It's amazing how many are still on the road.
Yeah.
Because when I talked to the one company, I said, oh, you don't make a fuel tank for the Super Beetle? No, just the regular one. And I said, well, how many tanks a year do you sell? I said, don't you have anybody want a Super Beetle tank? Yeah, we only have 30 or 40 a year, so we don't make that. I'm like, well, how many do you sell for the regular? He goes, we sell about 400 regular tanks. It's like you're selling 400, which means there's at least 400 of them driving, but there's 400 people that need to replace them.
Right.
I look around, I just don't see that many, but if you're looking, like when you got yours, you probably went, they're everywhere.
Absolutely.
But before you had it,
I didn't notice
you didn't notice unless it was in front of you in traffic and you don't even pay attention to it.
That was fun. And having those parts all available and 2 days later you could
This one's an automatic, which makes it's a auto stick, and I got it to work because you push it down to put it into neutral, and it's electric. It shuts puts it in neutral, but it's actually working now. And they had the wires run everywhere trying to make this thing work with a switch to put it in neutral, and I was lucky I got it to go. Even for me, it was just luck, but it works. So now they can take it and they'll be happy and be a good car for them, I think.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel and you join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Karina Carruthers. Congratulations from all of us here at Under the Hood and our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, uti.edu, where you can find everything you need to become a amazing automotive mechanic. Unless you just are awful and you have no talent and you just can't learn, and then they'll work with you.
Yeah.
But you'd have to be really bad not to become a really good mechanic with everything they can do for you there.
You'd have to try pretty hard not to
You'd
succeed.
have to try to fail.
Yep. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Archer. You're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hey, so I'm right now starting my first ever project car at 13, and I had a question on a 1990 Ford F150 Lariat with the Ford 300, and it's about the Maston cylinder.
Okay.
So I can't find it. It's not where you would find it on a usual truck, but I'm wondering, could it be a combo with the Maston cylinder and clutch?
Oh, you're looking for the clutch master cylinder.
No, the brake cylinder, but I couldn't find the master cylinder for the brake because I think I'm looking at the clutch cylinder, but not the brake.
Okay, the brake master cylinder on every vehicle, even if you've got one that's really hard, that one's going to be right up front there. But if you're looking for one, even on the hardest ones to find, if you go to the brake pedal and follow the rod from the brake pedal, it goes directly into the master cylinder. And even if you get something, when I say odd, like let's say we go back to the 50s, some of the cars would just have a pedal and then the rod would go to a bell crank down on the frame, which would move another lever to push a rod into a master cylinder under the floor. In this Ford truck, it would be on the firewall. Now, some of these vehicles, they would combine the master cylinder for the clutch, the reservoir for that, with the clutch. So you'd have a clutch master cylinder, a brake master cylinder, but you'd only have one tank for fluid to run them both. Some vehicles would do that, especially on the trucks. But yeah, if you follow, just look where the rod is going through that's attached directly to your brake pedal inside. That's going right into that brake master cylinder, which should be right on the engine side of the firewall there under the hood. That's a pretty cool truck with that 306 in it. That straight six was a really powerful engine compared to some of the other six cylinders out there.
And I only got it for $5.
That is the best part right there. $5.
Wow.
And it ran in 2021. So
that's a great deal because $5 you could always, no matter what you pay $5 for, if you could roll it to the scrapyard, you could get probably 500% your money right there easily.
Archer, thanks very much. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Mary Jane. You're on the End of the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hi. In early part of May, we purchased the Jaguar F, the 450 dynamic model in Florida. And it took quite a while. We live in South Dakota. And it took quite a while to get the car here, which I understand. And when we got it here, I'm looking for some information here. We drove the car it's a 2023, and it had 700 miles on it.
Okay.
And we drove it about 5 miles, and the car started vibrating and making strange noises, and we were able to, and a lot of dash lights came on, and we were able to pull it over to a secure place and park it, and we called the 800 number, and they said, not to drive it, that they would come and get it. And the closest Jaguar repair thing was in Colorado. And they did come and get it the next day. And that was, let's see, did they come and get it? This has been ongoing, so I don't have my notes right in front of me.
What happened to the car?
Well, we don't know. It just was doing it was making noise. It was vibrating. It had lost power. And we pulled it over and parked it, and all the lights were on, and we called Jaguar service, and they said, not to drive it, that they would come and get it.
Okay.
And they did, and it's been there 3.5 months.
Mm.
And they never did tell us exactly what was wrong with the car. And after a week or two, they said it needed a new engine.
Okay.
So we were like, well, okay, whatever. So they theoretically put a new engine in it. And it was delivered to us yesterday. And we drove it again, I don't know, 5 or 6 miles. And we had parked it on a steep hill and to show it to some people. And we, backed out and left. And it would go to 2,000 RPMs before the car would start to move. And it was also making a grinding noise. So again, we brought it home and parked it, and we have a call into them. And I guess I was just curious about Jaguars in general, if they have a lot of mechanical trouble or if we just got a lemon.
Well, they typically don't, not on brand new ones. Once they get to be aging, they can have more repairs needed.
This is a tough one because everybody you talk to is going to go, wow, yeah, that's what you get.
They wouldn't be able to sell them if they were all bad. But now, was this sold as a new car, or was this sold as with like a demo with 700 miles, or was it sold as a used car?
It was sold as a used. The dealer, it had no dealer warranty. It had Jaguar warranty.
It did have, okay, that's why I was wondering if it still had the Jaguar warranty on it. So there is a dealership in Minneapolis that I've had experience with that's really good, and then there's one in Colorado. The difference is from where you're located at, the one in Minneapolis is going to be much closer, 4 hours instead of 12.
Unless, where are you in South Dakota, I guess?
Yeah, well, that's true.
Well, yeah, we're in Rapid City.
Then it's further. You're closer to Colorado probably then, and I think there's one in Salt Lake City as well. But the Denver one's not a bad place either. But I would say if it was my car, I'd be calling the dealership, talking to a manager, and questioning, "Hey, I bought this car. I know it wasn't from you. I wish I could have bought it from you, but we were in Florida when we purchased it, and you did the service for Jaguar on it." And it found out it needed an engine, so they compensated you, and you put an engine in it. Well, somewhere along the line, since we only drove this car 5 miles since we got it delivered back to us across the country, there was a failure. So was the car test driven? How far did you drive it? Did you just put an engine in it and run it and say, yep, it's good to go, we drove it a mile? Realize I'm a long way away. We can't just get this car back easily. In our own shop, when we put an engine in a car, we typically put anywhere from 20 to 40 miles on each vehicle before it leaves. And I can tell you that about 5 to 10% of them have something not right that is small, but we address it. It's got a small coolant leak. It's got a little oil leak. It's got something rattling, something loose, and we fix it. That's why we drive it. And then if we find it after 20 miles of driving and we fix it, we drive it that many miles again just to make sure that it's really good. I think that they probably put the engine in it. They drove it, but not long enough to really give it a good test. And now it's got something else. It could have been something minor they left loose or a faulty part, but they need to spend a little more time in it. But I could tell you it's very likely that if they come and pick this car up again, if Jaguar picks it up, and they didn't charge you to tow it out there, did they, to ship it there?
No.
Okay. That's what I thought, because Jaguar's got a good policy on that. I believe Ford or Chrysler, they would, because there's dealers. It is costing them probably, because we ship cars here at Nordstrom's. It happens. It's probably costing them $1,500 to $2,000 each way to ship this car. So let's just say $4,000 round trip from where you are is what it costs them. Jaguar will not want to do that again. So when they ship it back out there, they're probably going to talk to them and make sure this car is in really good shape before it leaves that dealership again. And I'd like to think that this is a isolated incident, and it's going to be something pretty small. They may even have a technician that they know locally come take a quick look at the car before they spend that money to ship it, in case it is something small. The first time they probably assumed it was something major by what was described or what the telematics in the car, like the OnStar, Jaguar's equivalent, could tell them by the codes what happened. Mm-hmm. And if they said, oh yeah, this is an engine problem, but this one, they might be able to look at it and find out it's easier. So hopefully for you, it's something small and they can fix it.
And that
quickly.
Dealer in Colorado, the one that's doing service, they don't want to, right?
I mean, they don't want to do it again.
Right. They don't want to. They don't want to do a job that Jaguar is paying for
and have to do it again
those rates,
because it looks bad on their survey that their reputation with Jaguar.
Mm-hmm.
As a dealership, Jaguar says, "Hey, you fixed a car and it came back." And also with the customer, there's a customer satisfaction survey that everybody gets, even at the American dealerships. And to keep their number up high and say, we're the number one selling dealer in Colorado or wherever it may be, they've got to keep those numbers up. So they'll want to fix this vehicle. And if you get on the phone with them and you speak with that dealership, I would speak with the dealership and I would speak with Jaguar and say, look, we're kind of disappointed here. We're let down that we got this car and we haven't been able to drive it. We've put a total of 10 miles on it since we purchased it, and it's not working. It's just odd that it goes in for an engine and 5 more miles later it's not working.
Are you going to call Russ if this were your car? And speaking as a regular, not you, but
sure,
do you call the dealership you bought it from and start dealing with them, or are they out? They're just going to be like, hey man, you bought this car and you're 1,500 miles away.
I would probably call the dealership that I bought it from first, because it's a bigger one. It's in Florida. They may have a lot more pull, because I know some dealerships that are General Motors that have way more pull than other ones. And even though they're in a pretty big town, there's other ones that you could call that they have a hotline. I mean, they know who to call at the manufacturer, and they can get this moving.
And they want that reputation, that good reputation too.
Right, because the car was sold there. I'm sure Jaguar pulled up on their computer and said, why did this car fail with only 705 miles on it? And it was just sold at this dealership, and it was checked out thoroughly because it's one of our certified immaculate used cars. Something's going on. So they want to find out all those things. So I would make the dealership that you purchased it from originally, I would make them aware of the situation.
And maybe they'll step into that.
And maybe they'll contact the other dealership and say, hey, what's going on with her car? We sold it. It was perfect. We did this checkout, because they're going to want to make sure that they prove what they've done. And then the dealership that worked on it is going to want to say, this is what we did, and follow some things up. At the very least, it'll get you moving ahead, where they'll all be aware of what's going on, and they'll all think, let's get this lady's car fixed correctly and back to her in a reasonable amount of time.
When you're talking a 23 Jaguar, you've got people in that line that want you to be, you know what I mean?
They want you to buy another one.
Yeah, this isn't
in a few years.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to want to make.
We took our friend Daryl and Patty Auto Playground. We took their Jaguar. We drove it up to Minneapolis to the dealership there because we needed a spare key. That's it. And they bent over backwards. Yeah. They said, "Oh, you need a spare key? Well, while you're waiting, go over here and check out our brand new vehicles." Sure. And we were checking them out, and there were some new and some used. And we're like, these are nice. And they said, we're sorry, it's going to take a couple hours to get this key for you. So if you'd like, we could either have a chauffeur take you over, to the Mall of America and hang out for a while, or you can take our new Land Rover here and go for a drive and see how you like it, and come back with the key. And we did that, and we went out and rode around, and it was great. But they're looking to try to give you the best customer service. A lot of the dealers that are high end like that, Jaguar, Porsche, Lamborghini, they are going to go out of their way to try to give you the best service, because they know if you're buying that car, not only you, but you have friends that are probably looking for those cars at some point, and you don't want to tell your friends that this was a horrible experience, because then they're not going to sell a car.
And unfortunately, you're going to just be another couple months without a car, probably.
Yeah, something's going on when they got to ship it. But it's amazing that they would ship a car all the way across the country, that anybody does that, because it's very expensive.
Mary Jane, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Make a radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Kevin. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Kevin, what can we do for you?
Hey guys, got a 2018 Kia Forte. Uses about a quart of oil between every 5,000 oil change. Took it to the dealer. Dealer diagnosed worn piston rings and recommended an engine replacement. And I don't have a Jaguar, it's a Kia, and they denied the engine replacement and are waiting for it to blow. Is there anything I can do in the meantime while I'm waiting to help alleviate the problem?
So they'll replace it under warranty if it blows up, right?
Yes, it's I have 47,000 more miles, so I got to thinking that they're hoping that I make it to 47,000 more miles.
That's exactly what they're hoping.
Absolutely.
But if you could give it to Shannon, and he could blow it up for you in about a day the way he drives. You can give it to Chris and tell him, hey, I want you to go do the quick 60 in this and try get some new tires on it and run the course with it. Go drifting with it.
Don't record it.
He'd find a way.
Don't put it on social media.
Yeah. I can tell you this: those cars do have a code in them for over rev warranty void, basically. So if you were to drive down the road and manage somehow to get it to shift down to a lower gear, which they typically won't. The transmissions are programmed to protect them. They would know, but
right.
If this thing is already using this much oil, the likelihood that before it reaches that 100,000 that it just becomes so bad that it won't run is possible. And I know people that, when these cars start running bad, they're like, oh, it's misfiring on one cylinder because it's got a fouled plug with oil. They just keep driving it. They're like, no, I'm going to let her blow up. I'm going to wait until that cylinder's dead and the engine's not running. Because if you go in and say, hey, what's wrong? And the mechanic says, well, we'll put a spark plug in it. Oh, it's running good again. Oh, you might be good for another 20,000 miles. But they'll just keep going and going and going and let that thing just wear out. Or, oh, I was supposed to put oil in it? Huh. Well, I put oil in it after it locked up.
And not to put too fine a point on this, but they've
got a problem.
Kia, in general, has heard Kevin's call before.
Oh, yeah.
They've given this answer to other people before.
Mm-hmm.
And this is their policy. I mean, this isn't a let's see. This is a here's what we do.
They set the policy before they had problems with these engines.
Yeah.
They said, let's make a Forte. Here's an 18. Well, what do we do if it ever burns oil? Well, we got to set a policy. If it doesn't burn this much, we won't replace it.
Right.
Okay. And then all of a sudden they went, oh, no, George, this one's burning oil. Oh, no, they're all burning oil. We have a problem with these cars. Well, we set the policy before we had the problem. It's like you write the contract before any money's coming in. That's the best way to do it.
It runs great, and it gets 39 miles to the gallon, and that's the thing that ticks me off. And I take it in there, and they just, wipe their hands and say good luck, and I hope it makes it 48,000 miles, because then you're on the hook and taking it down to Nordstrom.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, if you say, well, what do you give me on a trade? Oh, because they'll tell you the car is great. Oh, you shouldn't be. No, don't worry about it. It's just a quarter every 5,000. No problem at all. Well, can I trade it in? Oh, well, it's not worth anything because it's got a bad engine. Well, what? Sometimes they will, though. I've seen a lot of these dealerships that when you get one that's wearing out like that, they'll trade it in. They'll give you the full price, the good value of a trade, because you're buying another new one, a different one that doesn't have the problem. But then they'll go and they'll find a way to get that engine warranted. They can figure it out, and they'll warranty it. Then they'll be able to sell it as a car with a replaced engine. So I wish I had better news for you, but
Kevin, thanks very much for the call. It's also, we've heard this before.
Oh,
not only
a lot,
but we have
the
too.
Kia, the Hyundai. It's just one of those things where you either have a good one that's perfect or you don't, and if you don't, it sucks because it's a lot of money to replace these things.
Let's go to New Jersey and talk to Danny. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Danny, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I got a 2008 Ford Ranger 4-cylinder, and it died one day, and then we checked the fuel pump, and there wasn't no pressure, so we went ahead and put the new fuel pump in, got rail pressure, and then it still wouldn't start, and we put a new oxygen sensor. We checked all the grounds to see if we had a loose one, put a new battery, and everything, checked everything. All the fuses were good. And then we got one fuse that was for the fuel pump relay, and we crossed it over, and it started, and it run. And then we took it off to see if it would keep on. Then it didn't. Then it run for a while, about 2 months, and then it stranded him over there in another city, and he gave it to me. So I was going to go ahead and see what possibility. The only thing I was thinking, could it be the computer?
The computer powers that fuel pump relay, but on those vehicles, we have specifically seen an issue right in the fuse box where the relay is, with the connector directly under that fuel pump relay. And if you pulled it out and jumped it and it started, and then took your jumper out and put the relay back in, and it worked for a while, it's very possible that wire is not making a good connection. And just by pulling it out and plugging back in, it got the connection back. So I would look very closely at that, try to clean up, use some electrical contact cleaner. Berryman B12 makes a great electrical contact cleaner we use all the time in our shop. Spray that on there, scrub it up a little bit with the end of a screwdriver blade, and then just try to pry those connectors together a little tighter, put a new relay in it, see if that fixes the problem, and hopefully that will. Otherwise, you're going to have to get a shop to diagnose it.
Go through the computer back.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the wiring there is a likely culprit for as many as we've seen.
So what they did is
it's a good thing.
Good test.
Yep.
Danny, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Hour 2 is coming up. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by Sturdivant's, 866-594-4150.
Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is not here this week. He's out doing car visiting. That's what they do, right? At that place.
They visit cars in the old folks' home?
Yeah, they visit and they talk and
he
make
is
rules.
Going. Oh, that thing. Yeah, he is going to the auction. His sister's got that Trans Am auction at Vanderbrink Auctions this Saturday. So she's that looks pretty cool. Anytime you get 100 or so or whatever it was, old Trans Ams in one location, it's kind of neat to just walk by and look at them. I'm not that kind of guy anymore. I'm not really in the market to go. I don't want any more cars that
you've
don't run.
kind of.
I just want If I want one, I'll buy it. I'll
Mhm.
drive it, but that's it. I'm not. I just.
But you used to like go,
I used to buy an
interesting.
old thing. I'd pick it
look
up
at that
and
one.
I could get this and not do anything with it and get rid of it and lose money on it after I stored it for years.
Right.
And yeah, I used to have a lot of stuff sitting around, but now I'm like, nope. I don't know. I hit that point and I went, no. I like looking at it. I like to drive somebody else's just for a day and go, yeah, that's good.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us. Deb is in California, and she's been on hold waiting for the music to end so she could talk. Deb, you're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
Yeah.
I had wrote in, and this is kind of a different question. I wanted to know about car warranties and if you guys know anything about them.
Yeah. So
You mean like after?
extended warranties?
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, on a used vehicle.
There are some really good ones out there, and there's just as many horrible ones. You've got to look for a company that's been in business for a while, a company that is reputable, that has likely one that does both homes and autos. So they're a bigger company. They're more diversified. Also possibly one that is part of a company that does more things. For instance, when we talk about our partner at Berkeley One Classics that insures classic cars, they're part of the WR Berkeley company, which is ginormous. Houses, jewelries, cars, antiques, antiquities, collectibles. I mean, they just do so much that they've got the power to cover a lot of things in a lot of areas. Sometimes with these warranty companies for cars, they're kind of fly by night. They've been in business for 1, 2, 3 years. All they do is
Sell
warranties. And when you start reading the reviews, you'll find that a lot of people didn't get what they expected when it came time for a claim. But other companies out there are very good, and they're reputable, and they've been around for a while. In our own shop, when we use warranties to cover people's vehicles, when they come in and say, hey, I got an extended warranty, can you figure out what's wrong with my car and call them? There's been some that have been better than others. We've used CarShield a few times. It has come into our shop. We've called them. It was easy to talk to them on the phone. They covered things. They didn't give us a big runaround. And I hear that one on a lot of the big talk shows often. And typically the talk shows are very leery about taking one of those vendors on. We have none on our show which is kind of weird. We're a car talk show. You'd think we might do that, but we just haven't partnered with any of them yet.
We've been approached.
Yeah.
And said, oh, not this.
Years ago, we had one that was great.
Mhm.
And they decided that they said, well, you did too good for us, and we sold a lot, so we obviously don't need to keep going because all your customers know about us. So maybe it's time for them to come back. But though the companies, they're real selective because they don't want to be known for the radio show that's promoting a horrible company. But they can be expensive, so you've got to choose. You want to make sure what they cover, because if you're spending, say, $4,000 on a warranty for 3 to 5 years, and they won't cover your problem when it occurs, then there's no point. Why did you even get it? It's a waste of money. So you really got to do a lot of research and see what people that have actually purchased it themselves and used it thought about it. Because if you look online and there's a Google review that says, I bought this warranty from this company and I had it for 5 years and it was great. Did you ever have a claim? Well, no, but it was great. No, it wasn't great because you never had a claim. You don't know how it was.
It might be, but you
want to look for somebody who had the experience and said, yes, I not only had one failure, I had 4, and they covered each one of them very thoroughly. Didn't cost me anything but my deductible. I was happy with it. I'd really look at those and see. How do you
find that?
I start looking.
How do you trust it?
I get
how
on
do you trust
Google
the reviews and all that?
You can kind of tell if you look down that, Chris, you get under that rabbit hole of stuff, and all of a sudden you start going, wait a second, that review is fake. It's like, is it from a verified review? That means this person has more than one. And when you see somebody that's reviewed a company click on their profile
See, yeah.
and look at their other reviews and see if they have 0 other reviews, it's probably fake.
And if you have a mechanic,
Mhm.
if you have a regular mechanic,
Ask them.
because I could say to you, hey, what about this company? And you would say, oh, we use them. They're good. Or never heard of it.
That's a great idea, Chris. So ask if you have a local mechanic where you're at in California, ask them who they see for warranties coming into their own shop that
That work.
actually covered
Yeah.
repairs for people that did a good job. Because you may say, well, what about Fred's warranty? Oh, they're horrible. I've had 3 of those come in and all of them wouldn't pay. They were just a nightmare. And, well, what about Mark's warranty? Oh, they're great. They cover them. They're nice. They're good to work with. That's what you want to ask the questions of the mechanic actually doing the repairs and the warranties.
Does that help you out at all, Deb?
It does very much because I've been spinning my wheels to try and find something and doing the reviews and research and asking people, and I've just got hundreds of different options. So yes, it helps.
Well, spinning your wheels is just regular use. We can't cover that. That's just Deb, thanks very
No
much
pun
for the call.
intended.
Good luck, all right?
Thank you. Thank you for your answers. Thanks.
You're welcome.
You bet. Yeah, that's a tough one because the best.
We've
talk
only
to a
had the one
mechanic.
company that was good because the other dozen that have approached us, I just told them right out, no, we're not. No, I'm not going to.
Well, and on your
tell our
end, you've had
listeners
so
about that.
many where you're like, oh, hey, they're like, hey, I have this company as a warranty company, and you can't get. They don't exist anymore.
Right.
So
I've had people bring them into me a few times, and I call the company, and it's like, the phone number is.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh.
And you don't want it to be a nightmare for your mechanic to deal with either.
Or the customer.
Right.
And we've had some where they want you to jump through hoops and spend all this money to diagnose it, and they don't pay you for any of that. So the customer's got to pay that.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, thanks for spending $1,000 of the customer's money. We're not covering it. It's not a covered part. Tell me up front.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us on the Under the Hood Show.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Now we're going to talk to Carl. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Carl, what can we do for you?
Hi, I've got a 2014 Buick Regal T, and I've just got a couple questions on it. Right now it's running great, and I want to keep it running great, and it's got about 65,000 miles on it, and I don't think the transmission fluid's ever been replaced in it. And I was looking at replacing the transmission fluid, but it looks like to do the fluid and the filter, it looks like you have to remove the entire transmission and split it in half to get to the filter.
Yeah, don't do
And
that.
I'm just wondering, okay.
It's a screen.
And I'm just wondering, it's what?
It's a screen inside the transmission. It's no need to change that. What we do is on transmissions that they allow a flush, we do a complete flush. On the ones that are drain and fill, we do a drain and fill. But that screen should only get clogged when there is a problem with the transmission causing clutches to disintegrate and gears and things to come apart and clog that with stuff. And if it's clogged, the transmission's junk anyway. So typically, if it's running great and the fluid doesn't look too bad, and you're just doing a change to get that additive package back in the fluid and keep it fresh so it still protects, that screen you'd find would be completely clean if you were able to remove it from the transmission. So you can bypass that part of it.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was asking about. If just doing a fluid change would be good enough.
Yeah, that's the way we do it.
Is that
they're pretty good cars.
Power, like where you hook it up to the machine? And
Yeah, we hook it to the machine, and then the transmission provides its own power.
Okay.
The pump pumps the fluid out, and it catches it in the machine, and then it puts the same amount back into the transmission, so it's a complete exchange of fluid. And then there's some transmissions that they say, if you look up the maintenance on them, they say drain and fill only. They do not want you
any pressure
dumping fluid out and putting stuff back in. They don't want it to cavitate. They just want it drained and filled. And that does a pretty good job. Some of them will say, like some of the Hondas will say, do it twice. They'll say, change it, run it through all the gears on the hoist, put it back in park, drain it and fill it again. That way it gets all the fluid out of the torque converter too, cleans it up. And that does a nice job of keeping them going.
We need to make a hoist. We need to make a hoist that it lifts the car up on its wheels, and then the wheels move, and you can simulate it being on the road for like the suspension trouble and stuff. When we talk about that, like a little 4-wheeled treadmill that you can run the car like it's running at full speed.
They have those dynos, engine dynos for cars. They have one that's rollers in the ground or on a trailer, and you can spin it and run it like your car. Next week, they'll run it on a dyno to test it out, and that's on a trailer setup where it can spin. They also make one where you pull the tires off on the hoist, and you hook this roll up to the car machine right to the wheels, and it's balanced, and it lets you drive the car, and these things roll around, but you need a hoist and this dyno that way. But those are great.
I told you it was a good invention.
It's nice to have in the shop so you can test the car under road loads without leaving anywhere.
866-594-4150. Carl, thanks very much for your call. Good luck. What has caught your attention in the automotive world?
You know, we talked earlier about people cleaning the AC condensers out because you can ruin an AC system, but we're seeing that so much now because of the heat this summer. Typically, people won't be coming in because their AC is working pretty good. But
this is something we've dealt with a lot, where, including me, I used to do this. I don't anymore. It doesn't work on high, but if I turn it down, it works fine. So I just have to be a little more patient. But that's
a bad idea,
right?
So if you're running it on high and the blower's working on high, but it doesn't get real cool, so you turn it down and it's cooler, that means the refrigeration system can't keep up. It's probably low on refrigerant, and it probably has a leak. The leak may only be in the winter, so you may end up recharging this thing every summer because they can't find the leak, because it only happens when the seals shrink and it gets cold outside. So you're gonna have that expense. But if you don't do that and keep it full of refrigerant, you also don't keep it full of refrigerant oil. The liquid refrigerant is carrying this oil around. And it's like running your car. If you knew that your car was half low on oil, would you just keep driving it and say, well, it's okay?
I just don't press the gas.
Yeah, the light doesn't come on unless I'm, get it really warm or tow something, but it's okay with only 2 quarts of oil in it instead of 4. I'm all right. No, you would add oil to it. Well, it's got a little leak, but it only leaks a little bit, and it's usually when it's really cold out or something. No, you would fix the leak or keep it full of oil, one of the two. With an air conditioning system, people don't really tune into the part about the oil.
Absolutely.
I need it recharged, right, Chris? I need my AC recharged. Well, there's oil and there's refrigerant in there, the Freon or the 1234, R134, whatever it takes. If it's not full, it can't move the lubricant around and it will damage it. And it's just like a car engine. There are pistons in there. There are piston rings. There are rods. There are bearings. And if they starve for oil, they'll start coming apart. And then just like metal in your engine oil, you'll have metal in your air conditioning system. And as it travels through, it will start to clog up the orifice tube, expansion valve, things like that. And then eventually it will plug it up so much that the pressures go up, the temperatures go up, and it'll explode, inside.
Right.
It's just done. And now we've turned a cheaper repair into a, $1,500, $2,500 if you get a really bad one, and it's an expensive.
If you have a van with the
with rear air
yeah.
and all that stuff, yeah, we've seen them, $2,500 to replace all that because they had a leak at the rear evaporator lines. We could have fixed that for about $500, and then they'd be good for another 5-10 years, whatever it was that the original made it. But they said, nah, we'll just leave it. It still works good if we turn it down a little bit. Oh boy. Or the other one that's bad is if you have a blower that's not working, it's cold, but it only works on 1 and 2, or 1 and 2 are out and the high works.
Mm-hmm.
People just leave it on 1, the blower's not working, and it's only putting out cool air going on the road. Well, it gets so cold at the evaporator that all the oil congeals and kind of sticks back at that and pulls it away from the compressor. So the evaporators are cold in this van or Suburban or whatever it is. And up front, the compressor's starved for oil, so it locks up. So if you got a blower switch issue where it doesn't work on all speeds, fix that. Save yourself a ton of money.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. That last call about the transmission.
Yeah.
That is
when do I change it? Should I change it?
Well, where is that line when we were kids? And I don't know, where's the year range where the cars that we had when we were little kids, the
Flintstone
70s cars, those are completely different on maintenance than cars today. Where is that changeover from? No, you don't put new spark plugs on it every 20,000 miles.
Well, some of them now they've gone back to that on some of these tiny turbo engines because they've overdid it. But yeah, that line changed, Chris, because a car, we'd say change your transmission fluid at 30,000 miles.
We used to go when we were kids. You went in, you got gas, the guy filled your tank and checked your oil
and
every
your transmission fluid.
Now you don't check your oil ever.
Cars are made to last longer with stronger parts, and they typically do. We got to remember that if you're changing your transmission fluid every 30,000 miles on your 1974 Vista Cruiser or whatever, that car probably took 4 or 5 years to get 30,000 miles on it. Now people do that in 8 months in a lot of the cars. They're going everywhere. Back then, our kids' soccer game was at the school, down the street, and it was rare if we went to play soccer against somebody else. It was at Ford Field, and when I say Ford Field, this was like a small baseball park down in Livonia, by Detroit. It was right up it's not the big stadium, but it was right up the street. Yeah. So we'd have a few schools go on a Saturday or a weeknight.
We played at Ford Field in St. Paul, right?
Yeah.
Next to the Ford plant.
There you go. So it's the exact same thing. So we would all, that's where we'd play, which was twice as far as our school, which was 6 blocks. So we were 12 blocks and we'd go to the other one. So we'd all load up in the Vista Cruiser and we'd go there, the Grand Safari wagon. It wasn't far. Now, how many thousands of miles did you travel for each one of your kids for hockey separately? Thousands, right?
We were thrilled when my daughter's team got a team that was only 75 miles away. We were like, oh, this is going to be great. I hope we play there a lot.
Well, they're banned. Didn't they go to Texas this year? Look at that, for somebody else's game. So we're putting more miles on. So the auto manufacturers said, okay, guys, we've got to, they demand more out of these cars. They're putting more miles on. So what is the equivalent of changing it every 30,000 miles at 5 years back then? Well, that's 150,000 miles now.
And they didn't just decide to make better cars. Everything just got better. The computer-aided design.
The cars got better because of the design, but also people were demanding more miles out of their cars, because now 300,000 is like a car that had 80,000 on it back in the 70s. They were just starting to wear at that many miles, like really bad.
I remember my mom taking it into the transmission shop and them saying, well, you got a high mileage car, you're going to have to do this. And it was like 50,000 miles. And they were like, you're going to have to start thinking about replacing this.
Things would dry out. The rubber hoses were not as good as these. We talked to Gates on an interview last week, and it was great. What he says, oh yeah, you don't change belts every 15,000 miles like you used to. They'll go 100,000 miles, but then you got to change them because they will go bad. Hoses, same way. It was really interesting listening to him talk about those things.
So where's
that gone longer?
That era, 90?
Most of the cars that we would see in the mid 90s.
Okay.
I would say 96, 97, about that time where we started getting longer. If it's in the 80s, we're still talking cars that had technology from the 70s. So somewhere very late 80s, mid 90s for sure, we started breaking over into the much longer changes. Wheel bearings
more recognizable.
That didn't need to be
a 99
packed.
Is closer to now than a 89.
The technology is really close to what we still use today in a lot of cars.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show. 866-594-4150.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel and join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Billy Thorson, congratulations from all of us here under the hood and our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, uti.edu.
Go do NASCAR tech.
Yeah.
And then move there, and then you could move into F1 maybe.
We talked to John Dodson about that. There's a interview on YouTube.
About the time you'll be getting finished, they'll be still working to get an American F1 team.
Yeah,
and this could work out. I'm going to do it.
You could.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter the age. It's all appropriate. Any age, you're good to get in there. Well, 18 and over.
Right. You can't send a 7-year-old.
No, unless they were really smart,
Yeah,
like
maybe.
Sheldon Cooper or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, they ask them. They might accept them if they've already graduated high school. But chances are, if they've already graduated high school at 7, they're probably not going to be an auto mechanic.
That's a good point, though. What if, the 12-year-old who just graduated from college, could he? I mean, he's got the education down.
Rocket scientist, mechanic.
It's a difference.
It's
the same.
Life as we know it on the planet, or mechanic.
Or keep people safe. And I like this idea. UTI grade school would just get them in. They could just do K through 12. Just start a whole thing, all cars. I think this is a really good idea. John, if you're listening, you go ahead. Go ahead. Good luck with it. 866-594-4150. We got a question on the chat a couple weeks ago that I wrote down, and I thought it was a good question. I know we got back to them on Facebook, but Jay wanted to know, we talked about an additive for valve guides leaking. It just came up in a conversation with someone who had valve guides leaking. Talk a little bit more about that, because Jay has the same thing going, and he didn't catch it, of course. And so what do you recommend when we talk about that problem?
There's nothing for a valve guide, because that is a metal component that wears out, and you just can't fix it. Valve stem seals, however, is a different subject, and a lot of those leak because of age. They don't remain pliable anymore. So the little umbrella seal that goes over the top of the valve stem and the valve guide gets a gap in it, air gap in it, and oil will run down it and leak past the valve stem into the cylinder. Usually when you turn the engine off, you restart it, you get a blue cloud of death coming out of the tailpipe. And it's the seals. And that can sometimes be repaired with oil additives. Our partner Justice Brothers makes a oil system stop leak. And that is made to condition older seals and make them pliable again. Think of it like the stuff you put on your seats, like Armor All has got some stuff type of thing or whatever. Yeah,
I mean,
dry, cracked hands, you don't want them to be that way, or your seats are getting really stiff, so you put the conditioner on, leather conditioner.
Yeah.
It's probably a better word than Armor All, but you put that on there, and it makes them soft again, and they move before they crack. Well, if they've already cracked, it's too late. You can't do anything about it. But high mileage oils, when you see one that says high mileage formula, helps control oil burning, well, that's how it does it. The oil has an additive in it which helps make these old crusty seals pliable again. But again, if they've already cracked because of age, they won't work. But typically when we tear an engine down that's been burning oil, the umbrella seals are going to be very stiff, like solid as a rock. They aren't cracked. They have to be pretty old to be cracked, like decades old, like a classic car. But if they're just hard as a rock,
a little
rubber, you can put the conditioners in them, and they'll eventually work into the pores of the rubber and plastic and get them to move again, and that'll work. So I would definitely, if you've got a car that's burning oil and you know that you've been told it's valve guides because they've diagnosed it, it's not piston rings, then that could help. I mean, that's the cheapest way to do it, is probably start using the high mileage formula oils, and almost every oil manufacturer makes that.
It's not a fix, but it'll get you.
But it just helps that car control oil burning into its old age.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Brett in Oklahoma. Brett, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Morning, guys. I've got a 2014 Ford Escape 2-liter with about 59,000 miles. Just had a couple of questions. No problems. Should I run a full synthetic oil in that engine? And then also, I think I heard Russ forewarn about the timing chains in this motor.
Belts.
Should I plan on replacing the timing chain at some point?
Yeah, the timing belt and synthetic oil. So, yeah, the timing belt, we'll do that first. So we have 2 recently in the shop. Timing belt broke one broke at 69,000 miles and one broke at about 80,000 miles. That seems pretty low. They recommended a lot longer change for that belt. But when we see them break at that many miles, it makes me nervous about them. And you got to do the whole kit, which includes the water pump, because the water pump will fail on these. We've done several of these already that were wobbling around and failed. Good maintenance. Otherwise, the engines run really well. The factory recommends I believe they recommend synthetic blend in these engines, but that's their recommendation. They're really, what they're saying is they don't want you to use a plain old oil. Now, every oil you buy now is synthetic blend.
It's hard to find one that's
right.
not.
That's not. We tried to find one the other day for a Volkswagen Beetle, and guess what? We couldn't find one. We ended up going with a special hot rod oil that was twice the money, but that's what it was designed for, is no synthetic at all. So they want you to use that synthetic blend. This fully synthetic on an engine that's already broken in, such as yours with the miles on it, is perfect. It's a better formula oil. It's going to protect better. It's going to keep things cooler as far as the oil temps in the engine because of reduced friction. It's a good choice for the engine longevity.
And there was a time when synthetic oil was sticker shock to everyone, but now
it's all sticker shock because you can't get it. You don't get the cheap oils. You're going to pay that much. In fact, in our shop, we just switched over we had bulk oil that we carried a lot of different types, weights, but we didn't carry the 020 in a bulk because we got it much cheaper, about 40% cheaper by buying it in smaller containers because they wanted so much for it. Well, now we just switched on Monday this week. We switched over to the bulk because now the bulk is cheaper in synthetic when you're buying 250 gallons at a time rather than buying these in these small boxes. Mm-hmm. So you just got to watch, but they're all expensive. I went into Dollar General a week ago to buy some stuff for the shop, some shop supplies. And when I did that, I happened to look over and went, oh, look, they have some motor oils on the shelf. How much do they get, just out of curiosity?
Oh, good question.
And just a standard synthetic blend 5W30 was $7.50 a quart. And then people come in and say, well, how come your oil change isn't 1995? It's like, when was the last time you had oil changed? It's not cheap. So it's all going up. It's actually become, buying in bulk now, it's actually become very similar to what you can do it at home for as what a shop will charge you to do it.
So in Brett's case, it couldn't hurt.
No, I would say if it was my vehicle, I'm going to use a fully synthetic in it. That's a small, powerful little engine that generates a lot of heat. The more you can do for it in way of keeping it protected by the proper lubricants, I would go with that.
And now, timing belt.
And a timing belt, for sure. And with the miles you have
started
on it.
With that.
Yeah, the age and the miles. Well, we're talking 10 years old.
Yeah.
You look at the build data, I bet it's 10 years old. I'm putting a timing belt on it. And I think that's what's happened on these other ones too. It's not the miles, it's the age, and that's killing the belts.
Does that help you out there, Brett?
It does. I appreciate it.
Thanks very much for the call. Yeah, that is that synthetic. I remember there was a time when, you could go get an oil change for $20 and a synthetic was $60, and it seemed crazy, but now they've all kind of caught up because they all. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we want to hear from you. 866-594-4150. Lila, you're up next on the Under the Hood Show.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Lila, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Yes, I have a 1994 Ford Ranger, and it has a gas leak, so I have been told. And in order to fix it, I'm wondering what all would take place. Are there other lines that are around those two lines of the gas leak? Or, in other words, is it a complex deal? And about how much would something like that cost?
Well, the more you talked, the more I started thinking about what was leaking and where it is, because you haven't told me exactly where it is. So I am wondering, on a 94 Ranger, it is common for them to have rusted fuel lines, and they can rust all the way from the tank at the sending unit down the frame rail and rust out where they get dirt buildup in them where they contact the frame. What part of the vehicle do you see the gas on the ground underneath at? Do you see is the fuel leak on the ground anywhere?
Yes. We have looked right under the fender of the truck, and we can see it's like a slow drip.
In the front or the rear?
In the front.
Okay, if it's leaking in the front, probably on the driver's side there under like the driver's feet?
Yes.
Okay, that is where the fuel lines for the engine, they come down to the frame by the fuel filter and they curve there, and it's likely just rusted through. As long as the brake lines are good and they haven't rusted through, they'll just replace the fuel lines that are bad. Some of these you can still purchase. Our partner Dorman Products makes a number of fuel lines and brake lines and replacement kits. There are others that are in less demand that they do not make. If you can get a set from them, that would be an amazing way to go, because then you've got ones that fit correctly.
And they're
engineered, ready to go.
Pre-sized, bent. Yeah.
Right. But if you cannot, then the mechanic will have to make their own lines, fabricate their own lines. And if you had to, I can't tell you what a repair will cost for just one line in one area, but if you had to take the fuel tank out and replace the lines all the way from the tank all the way to the engine, I could see there's been jobs we've done that have been $600 to $800 if you had to replace that whole set, take the tank out, parts and everything, and replace the two brake lines that are on that side at the same time. So we're replacing everything metal that's a line on that side and the vent line. If it's just one spot, and sometimes it is. Sometimes it's laying up against the frame and it's collected dirt and rusted through, and you'd be able to cut out that section, flare it, put a new piece of line in, and they might be able to fix it for $200 to $300 in that one section. So that's what you should expect. As long as the vehicle itself is in good shape, though, if it runs well, it still looks pretty good, and it's a nice vehicle otherwise, then it'd definitely be worth repairing, because finding a 94 Ranger, even though it's older, if it still runs well and it looks fairly decent, and it's maybe even got air conditioning that works or something, it's still, you're going to spend $3,000-$4,000 to pick up a good running older vehicle now. So it might be worth fixing. Just ask lots of questions before you have it repaired.
Does that help you out there, Lila?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for the call. And that's,
common repairs.
And don't mess with it.
No,
right?
You don't want a gas leak, because if the gas is going to leak in the front, it's going to blow to the back. It's going to blow on the exhaust. Or it can get a spark under there. It's not a good thing. But we replace lots of lines under vehicles, whether they may be fuel lines, they may be brake lines, but we replace a lot of the steel lines. And the plastic line vehicles, they have repair kits for those now too.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. I can see that Doug's got a call. Okay. We were looking at each other there like.
He's going to push that button and.
Let's talk to Mike. You're on the Under the Hood show. Mike, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I've got a unit that has an AC compressor on it that when I go out in the morning and start it, it'll squeal every so often. About every third time I start it, the compressor will squeal until it, maybe a minute and a half, and then the squeal goes away.
You're talking about like a belt squeal, like and then it goes away after it runs for a bit?
Right. The clutch is engaged, but the pulley isn't turning. It'll turn and stop, turn and stop, turn and stop. And then all at once it takes off and runs and no more squealing.
Well, hopefully that's not a problem and a fault with the compressor. It's in the belt drive system. Because if it works well once it gets going, usually it's in the drive system. So the belts get worn, the tensioners don't hold their tension anymore, and they just can't hold and go. And what we tell people, we suggest putting on, when you do a belt kit on an older vehicle, do the complete kit. Our partner at Gates sells a complete kit, which includes the belt, the tensioner, and the idler, because they all wear at the same rate. So you replace them all together. That way you get the proper tension on the belt. But then before you put it on, you take the old one off, and we'll put our gloves on so we don't, because that brake, I say that only probably, I don't know if I've ever said that, but yesterday I used some cleaner and I got it on my hands and I was dizzy after I was like, oh, that stuff is super strong.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to wear gloves when I apply it, but just get some cleaner and a rag and wipe around the pulley surfaces, the ones that you didn't replace.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Tensioner and an idler, you're throwing the old ones away anyways, or recycle them in your scrap metal. But the ones that are on there, like the pulley on the AC compressor, wipe that down good to get all that old belt residue off, and then the crank pulley down below, make sure there's no oil on it. And after they're good and dry, then put your new components on so they've got a good grip, because a belt with oil and old residue is like car tires on ice. They're just going to spin. And if it's got the proper tension, you should be all right. But it sounds to me like if it's working fine once it kicks in, and sometimes it kicks in and works fine, that's probably it. This isn't a compressor that's mounted down on the bottom, is it?
No, it's mounted up on top of the motor.
Because of the ones that are on the bottom, it'd be a different thing.
Yeah, it's right out visible.
Okay.
No problem there.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably a belt issue. It's not getting the grip anymore, and it doesn't have the tension, and it just can't spin it. I rented a loader a couple weeks ago, and you'd start it up, and every time I started it for about 2 minutes, it was screaming belt noise, and then I'd hear the fan spin up, and the noise would go away.
Mm-hmm.
It just needed a little heat on that belt to spin the tires, so to speak.
And that's one, if he lets it go, if he just lets it burn itself out, it's a new compressor, right?
Well, no, it's probably going to be a burnt up belt. The belt will probably come off it eventually.
Okay.
Just burn a hole right in the belt.
Mike, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Bob. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Bob, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I'd say calling about a 2006 Ford Explorer, and it's got the 4.6 V8 in it. It's getting close to 200,000 miles, and I'm just kind of thinking I want to keep this vehicle for possibly for another 10 years, 100,000 miles. What kind of recommendations would you have me go through as far as, any recommendations on what things I should definitely look at, maybe replacing or repairing? I mean, it's not really needing repair right now, but what could I possibly be looking at? And
okay.
They're pretty good, and with the V8 engine, they're better off than the other engines this one could have at this many miles. As far as preventive maintenance for this vehicle, we would be looking at a coolant flush, because the coolant becomes acidic with age. Of course, your regular oil changes are important on these. They like to see them around 3 months, 3,000 miles, because of the oil passages in the engines. They'll start to get clogged, so you can kind of prevent that with the earlier changes. Transmission fluid change, a complete flush with a flush machine. Then your front and rear differential and transfer case fluid, change those. Look at your belt. You got 200,000 miles. I'd definitely be putting the belt system on with a belt and the tensioner and the idler, because at some point that will break. We had one break the other day and an engine overheated, and luckily it didn't burn the engine up, but it broke and it looked just fine. But because of the age and the miles, it just fell off, just broke right in half. So I'd be looking at that. Otherwise, you're going to have maintenance on brakes and stuff like that as you go, but you can address that as you go. But to keep that engine solid, you're going to want the fluids changed in it and such. I'd even look at with 200,000 miles, I would even flush the brake fluid, because as brake fluid gets really old, don't overchange it, but as it gets really old like that, it becomes acidic and it will start to eat wheel cylinders and things like that, and caliper pistons, and they'll start to leak. So you can prevent that. And power steering flush, same way. It'll keep the rack lasting longer.
Now, all that stuff you mentioned, if he brought it all in and did it now, it'd be a lot.
It's a lot to do it all at once. So put it on a schedule.
Yeah.
Pick one thing and do it like every 3 months, so it's spaced out. So you get the transmission fluid one time, and then 3 months later you're doing the coolant. So, if you're spending X amount of dollars, you don't have it all piled up together unless you want to.
And since he has no issue right now, there's no real need to do one before the other?
No.
Okay.
No. But I would probably start with a coolant flush, and then I'd probably start with coolant flush, and then the trans, and then I'd get those differentials serviced and move on.
This seems like a good time to point out to Bob and to everyone, like when you call the show, or if you hear something on the show and we give you a bunch of things that you can't keep track of, because that happens all the time, you can go watch the show on YouTube or subscribe to the podcast. You can go to our website and listen to the podcast, and you can go back and hear parts. You can go back and hear the parts that you thought you heard a couple weeks ago that now is relevant to you, et cetera.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah. So there you go. Just Bob, thanks very much for the call. This is the way to do it, isn't it? I mean, what Bob's plan is the way we all should do it. Plan for it. And
a lot of us don't, but that's the way to do it if you want it to last.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here. That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Thanks for joining us. You can always find us at underthehoodshow.com. And don't forget, you can watch the show on our YouTube channel. All right, we are now in the after show, and we've got a call here. Let's talk to Dale. Dale, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Hey, guys. A couple things to talk about. First is for Chris. Chris, I just want you to know I'm on I-90 westbound. Just went past Laverne, entered South Dakota. I'm going 79 miles an hour in the left lane.
Are you passing people?
All right.
Oh, I'm just right beside somebody going exactly the same speed.
Good. Yeah, that's awesome. I think. Did you do that this morning on my way in too? Because I had a guy.
Oh, yeah.
All right, great. I had a guy racing me. He was racing and pacing me the other morning. He just would not let me do anything. I couldn't even slow down and let him get ahead of me. Nothing.
Oh, Chris, you're gonna love it. So you're 70 miles an hour now, right? When you leave Laverne.
Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, they're going to change the speed limit all the way from the Minnesota border, and it'll go all the way to Interstate 29 to 65.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
Don't start with me.
They are. So they just announced that they're going to be dropping the speed limit from the Brandon.
No.
From Brandon to Interstate 229 to 65. I think in a couple weeks.
Don't start.
But then they're going to extend it all the way, because they said people are they go 70 and then they get up to 80 for a couple miles and then they drop down to 65 and then back up to, so they're like, no, we're going to lower it down. And the biggest reason they cited for that were all the people that leave the interstate and get onto Veterans Parkway and try to go 80.
I'll tell you what, I've been reading a lot about, not just recently, not in relation to me, but that Veterans Parkway, they need to put visual cues in there. That's one of the problems. That it's a nationwide thing.
It's like a racetrack.
And they say that when they make more space for cars, they speed up and get more dangerous.
That road, other than the traffic light, once they get more roads out there, and I know people were like, what are you talking about? Well, we have this road which has like a 2 mile stretch, and it's 3 lanes on both sides in this 2-mile stretch.
Flat,
and
there's
people are
nothing-
doing
yeah.
85, 90. They don't care because and it's safe at that speed. It's flat, it's large, it's wide. But then all of a sudden, boom, you come into 4 traffic lights. Tuk, 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 tuk. And that's the problem. People don't slow down. It's actually 45 miles an hour at one point. And I was going a little faster. I was going like 55 on Monday night, I think it was, where this 45 is. But, to my defense, I'm going to be self-serving here. Going 55 and a 45, there were people flying by me like I was stopped.
Yeah.
They must have been doing 65, 70.
And that was, I don't have any excuse for my ticket.
They
Except
just got
I just
you.
didn't realize
You were the unlucky one.
I got off the interstate and
Because Shannon was right.
No kidding.
He should have got it
All
right.
right, Dale, now that I'm all worked up, what's your second part?
So 76 Jeep CJ 304, and it's running really rough. If I start pulling plug wires, cylinders 3, 4, 5, 6 don't make much difference in how it runs, but cylinders 1, 2, 7, and 8, it just falls on its face really bad. So my question is it possible? Is that like a dual plane intake? Is there a possibility that I'm not getting fuel to those middle cylinders?
No.
Okay.
I don't think I had this engine in one of these vehicles with a 3-speed. It wouldn't go over 55 miles an hour, but that thing, somebody had changed the intake on that, and it had a dual plane Edelbrock on it. But the way it's designed, I don't think so. I'd have to look at your vehicle and see what's on it. I mean, if it does have a dual plane intake and it's set up that way, and you have a carburetor problem, yeah, you could have a issue with fuel delivery. Anytime you cut fuel to any cylinder, you could have an issue with it. But that could be tested through a theory of, you could shine a flashlight in there and look. I always wear the face shield when I'm looking down a carburetor now because I've had a couple of them, backfire right in my face. I don't like that. But you can look in there and see as they idle, you crack them just a little off idle, and you can see in there if there's fuel being drawn in. If it's only being drawn in on half of the intake and not the other half, yeah, that's a problem. For all 4 of those center cylinders to be dead like that, it's not going to be an ignition issue. It's going to be fuel, or you're going to have an issue with, you could have a couple valves in opposing cylinders that are bad, causing an issue where, if you got a compression issue and valves that are leaking back into that intake, disturbing the airflow, that could cause a problem too. I know on mine, I had the valves were too tight after that engine was rebuilt, and I had 4 dead cylinders on mine. They were the opposite 4, but the valve, I had 2 cylinders with valves that were too tight, and I readjusted those and took care of it. Just pulled the valve covers off, and you loosen them up until they click, and then tighten them up until they just stop clicking, and then you pour all that hot oil all over your exhaust headers, and it smells like burning oil. It was great. Love that when I was a kid. The smell of burning oil, but they're not really a stock. They're not really a fast engine because mine had 38-inch tires on it and the stock gearing, and wide open it was like 55 miles an hour because that's all the power it could muster before it was rebuilt, and that was about it. So I wouldn't be doing 80 miles an hour or even 79 in the left lane in that. Going downhill maybe 65.
Yeah, it's just weird because, like I said, it's just running rough, and like I said, there's no those middle cylinders aren't doing much at all. When I pull plug wires, they don't change how it runs at all hardly. So, and the other question I have is somebody replaced the stock distributor and went to electronic. I think it may be about
HEI.
a Ford distributor.
Well, yeah, high energy ignition type design.
And so now the vacuum advance gets the power steering belt because the pump's up high, and so you can't really
you got to move it.
Adjust the timing. Is there
pull it out?
Is there a different? Yep.
Yeah, just mark where it's at now. So take the cap off and mark the base of the distributor. Get yourself some paint. I don't care what color it is, but mark the base of the distributor and mark the rotor of exactly where it's at right now. And then you're going to pull the whole distributor out, and it's going to twist as you pull this thing out. Move the whole distributor and the rotor equally at the same time so they don't move separately from each other, and put it where the vacuum advance can fit in the vehicle now without hitting anything. And you're going to set it back down in, and the distributor now should line up with that mark on there. You don't really care where it's at on the base, because that you don't have to worry about that. You'll have to reset the timing anyways. But when you put that back in, as long as the rotor lines up with the base of the distributor, we're going to keep the firing of the cap the same, and we're going to keep the base timing the same where it was. And then once it's running, then you'll get your timing light out and set it. But you can put that distributor any position. It doesn't care what position it's in. So as long as you keep it lined up with the cap, and how you do that is you put that rotor back in to match exactly where you took it out. But you can turn it backwards an inch so it clears to get the advance you need to not hit the power steering and all that.
Okay, I was wondering if that was what I could do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
If it gets too far, you've got to move the rotor and then move the plug wires on top of the cap and everything. But you can move, if you pull it out, you should be able to move it back like 1 inch and still get the wire, put the cap back on with the wires exactly where they were.
Dale, thanks very much for the call. Good luck.
Yep, thanks.
All right, I got nothing else to add for the after show. Shannon's doing.
Just lonely without Shannon.
It is a little.
You'll be gone next week.
I'll be gone next week. Yeah.
I'll make sure I start the show on time this week.
I offered to drive down. We're going to Florida.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll drive.
You're a driver.
I am a driver. And I just love it. The other day I was going to pick up my daughter at school, and we were going on our road trip, and it was just a short drive, but we stopped at the rest area. And I just I just loved being it was just a weekday when I went and picked her up. But man, I was in the rest area and I felt like I was on a road trip. I was just so happy. I got to get a job where I can just go where I want. If anybody just wants like pictures of places,
Yeah, on the road.
Yeah. Hey, I'll go. If you can, I'll go take a picture of.
I would love to go back to like 1975. And sit in a rest area all day in a lawn chair.
Watch the cars, just watching
them come in and go. Yeah. Wouldn't it be cool just to see the cars as they drove in and out? And I don't mean on camera. You can do that. I mean, I want to sit there and watch. Just don't need to talk to anybody. Just need to watch the cars as they pull in. Oh, that one's overheating. Maybe we got to get some water and pour in the radiator.
We were kids. We used to go over to Rice Street and watch cars because you wanted to see the cool cars go by.
Yeah. We had a stoplight out in front of my grandparents' house. We'd watch cars there.
Covered in an exhaust dirt. Just come home and just be covered in filth from all the exhaust. That was real good. No wonder my knee hurts. All right, that'll do it for the Under the Hood show. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, all that stuff, because that all helps. It changes the algorithm.
Yeah,
we noticed defeat the algorithm.
On YouTube, when people are liking a video, wow, it really shoots up.
Yeah, it does.
Everything shoots up.
So just like it. Come on. Just click. Come on. Click like right now.